Welcome at Pizza and More. One of our most important ingredients for our pizza dough is the yeast. You may know if you follow my videos, I use normally dry yeast. Dry yeast is very handy for me, and I see here absolutely zero difference between using dry yeast and fresh yeast. Sometimes I use as well fresh yeast. I'm Jürgen and we will make this time a baking taste. I want to compare the conventional fresh yeast with a bio fresh yeast. Normally they say the bio fresh yeast is not that powerful than a conventional fresh yeast. I don't know it, but I will try it and I will find it out. This, by the way, is a wish from a viewer, and of course, if someone has a wish, if someone asks me to test something or to do something, if possible, I will do it. Yeah, firstly, I want to tell you something round about the yeast, the different versions of, or what's the main difference between conventional fresh yeast and the bio fresh yeast. There are some differences. I definitely didn't know it. I also had to do some researches in the internet. I found lots of information, and a few small pieces of this information is now for you. So you may know food for the yeast is normally sugar. However, it's not important or not required to add additional sugar as food for the yeast to our dough, because the sugar and the starch, which is already in the flour, is really absolutely enough as food for our yeast. Yeah, and the yeast produces during the fermentation, if there is enough oxygen available, CO2, and the CO2 will then make our dough weak or loose. Without enough oxygen, the yeast would convert the sugar into alcohol. Yeah, and beside the oxygen, the yeast needs nitrogen to produce some protein. Then it needs phosphorus to breathe. And of course, some minerals and vitamins. Conventional yeast will be bred or will be produced on molasses, and this molasses is something which is left over from the normal sugar production. The required nitrogen is added inorganic, let's say as an artificial fertilizer, and additionally some synthetic minerals and some synthetic vitamins. And they use some artificial stuff to prevent during the fermentation the foaming of the whole thing. After the creation of the yeast, they have to wash twice the conventional yeast, and the wastewater is very hard to break down. In comparison, the bio yeast is produced only with bio raw materials. So the food for the yeast is bio grain. The bio grain contains, compared to molasses, for example, enough nitrogen for the yeast. And the foam will be prevented in the fermenter with sunflower oil. And of course, it's not required to wash the yeast after its production. There are a few little things we have to consider when we use bio yeast. Originally, the bio yeast was only for bakeries, so for bakers who followed this bio trend. And also these bakers had to consider a few things to have the same great baking results as with the conventional yeast. Yeah, and the most important thing with the bio yeast, which we have to consider, is the time. So bio yeast takes far longer than normal yeast to start, and then also during the leavening it takes simply longer. Normally this should for our pizza dough no problem, because the leavening time for our pizza dough is in any case 24-48 hours or so. I think this makes more or this is more difficult if you make some sweet dough with yeast. If this dough contains lots of sugar and if this dough contains lots of butter, then this may really a bit a difference, and then you don't have a leavening time only of 2 hours, then you maybe have a leavening time of 3 to 4 hours. But if you consider this, as I said, then there should be normally no difference in the baking result. Another problem with the bio yeast is that this yeast dies faster, which means there is the best before date on a package, and you should really use the bio yeast before this date. Otherwise it will lose its power and the result is really bad. A conventional yeast, even if the best before date is over, it has the same power. You only have to check, is the yeast still good or is the yeast bad? If it's good, you simply can use it. It's also not recommended to freeze bio yeast. If you freeze bio yeast, it also will lose totally its power, and of course it will be very liquid after unfreezing it. But however, if you have some leftover bio yeast, you can put it into a airtight box, put it into the fridge, and there it will definitely be usable until the best before date. As the bio yeast grows far slower and as the bio grain is more expensive than molasses, for example, the bio yeast itself is also more expensive. When I bought the 2 cubes, the conventional fresh yeast and the bio fresh yeast, I would say the bio yeast was almost 4 times more expensive than the conventional yeast. Yeah, now I told you lots of things regarding the different yeast versions, so the conventional and the bio fresh yeast. I have to say I simply did not know everything. I also had to do some researches in the internet. I did this and I was really surprised what the difference between both kinds of yeast is. And now we will make a normal Neapolitan pizza. Not the traditional one, but a normal Neapolitan pizza with the 4 ingredients we use normally, which is flour, yeast, water and salt. I thought I will use a flour with a high baking strength because the whole leavening time will be 48 hours. So flour with a high baking strength, this has a W value of 340 to 360 and a protein value of 14%. Then I thought we will make a hydration of 65%. This is not too less, this is not too high. And I will definitely make both those on exactly the same way with exactly the same ingredients. One even with a bio fresh yeast and the other one with the conventional fresh yeast. And now I would say we start with our dough. Here we have now the ingredients we need for our 2 doughs. As I already said, I have here 500 grams of 00 flour. Then I have 325 grams very cold water, 15 grams of fine sea salt, and 1.2 grams of fresh yeast. I can't see here any difference of the fresh yeast. However, maybe the bio fresh yeast might be a bit darker, but if this is a result because this is a fresh bio yeast or not, I can't say it. The reason why these are smaller pieces is the only reason that I'm able to compare it right now as well. And from a smell, both are exactly the same. I will create now a direct dough from both. I start with the water and the yeast and the flour. After 5 minutes of kneading time, I will add the salt, and the total kneading time will be around 20 minutes. And then I knead simply until the window test works, and as soon I have the dough balls ready, I will show you the result. Yeah, these are now the 2 dough balls. This one here in the box with the black logo is the dough made from the conventional yeast, and this one here with the white logo is the dough made with the bio yeast. During the kneading I detected absolutely no difference, so both doughs behaved exactly the same. I had a total kneading time of each dough of 25 minutes. I kneaded until the window test worked, and it worked for both. The reason why this dough ball is still a bit rounder and a bit higher than this one is pretty simple. This dough was kneaded before, and this dough is ready for 5 minutes now only. Now I will cover, of course, both doughs. Then I let them rest for around 2 hours at room temperature, and then I put them for around 30 hours into the fridge. My dough was now for around about 30 hours in the bulk fermentation. So I had the dough in the fridge. At first, as I already said, I let it rest for 2 hours at room temperature. Then I put it into the fridge, and now 30 hours are over. Now I will shape the pizza boys. I can't see here a big difference between the bio yeast and the conventional yeast. I will show you the dough in a few seconds. But however, now I will make the pizza boys. This time from kneading the dough until shaping the pizza boys, here you are relatively flexible. It's not absolutely important if you shape the dough boys after 12, 24, 36 hours or so. There is one importance: you should shape the dough boys. I would recommend minimum 12 or 8 to 12 hours before baking the pizza, so that the dough ball has enough time to get relaxed. And of course, what I already said during the introduction of the yeast, I would recommend not to shape the dough balls directly after kneading, because we heard if we bring new oxygen to our dough, or to the yeast in this case, then the yeast will produce more CO2, and this will loosen our dough, and then we have more air bubbles in the dough, and the dough will rise nicely. And now we go on with shaping the dough balls. On this side we have the dough which I made with the bio yeast, and this here is the dough made with the conventional yeast. And honestly speaking, I can't see here any difference. Both doughs rose great, and I think there is no difference. And now I will shape the pizza boys. Here we have now already our pizza boys. If you are interested in how to shaping the pizza boys, please check out some other videos from me. I have to say here, with shaping the dough boys, there is absolutely zero difference. Both were absolutely identical. The dough is really very stable. We have a fantastic gluten structure. The dough doesn't stick. I did not wash my hands after shaping the dough boys. You can see the dough is really sticking absolutely not. And we have already lots of air in our dough boys. I had already very big bubbles which I opened already, but I can't see here any difference from the bio yeast to the conventional yeast. Maybe if we see both those so in a direct comparison, it might be the case, like also with the yeast, that the dough made from the bio yeast is a little bit darker, but this is really only a very little, a little bit more than this dough. If you would see only this or only this, you would see definitely no difference, if you wouldn't have both in absolutely next to each other. Now I close the lid, and then I put them directly back into the fridge, and I will take them out of the fridge round about 4 hours before baking. The boys had now a leavening time for 12 hours. Exactly or round about 4 hours ago, I took them out of the fridge. They look really fantastic. I can't see here a big difference. I will show you the comparison in a few seconds. Everything is well prepared. I have everything here to make 2 nice pizza margherita. I don't think there will be a huge difference while baking, but let's see. And now we start directly with our pizza. Yeah, here you can see the dough balls. This one here is the one from the conventional yeast. This one here is from the bio yeast. And I really can't see here any big difference. And I think both those developed absolutely fantastic. And yeah, well, now let's bake our pizza. I will start with the dough made with the bio yeast, and I won't say too much regarding everything because it should be, the main focus should be on the yeast. The pizza ball needs to be turned several times in the semolina, and then I will shape a normal Neapolitan pizza. And then we will start with the tomato sauce, fresh grated Parmesan cheese, then fresh basil, and then mozzarella fior di latte, and of course some olive oil. And now it's time to launch the pizza. And now comes the pizza to the oven. Now we have here our pizza made with bio yeast, and now some fresh basil. And now let me cut into this nice pizza, because if someone says bio yeast has no power, I think this is not correct. And here you can see all these air pockets, fantastic. And now we make the pizza from the conventional yeast.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbane.
So, and now we have here the other pizza. You saw right now making of the pizza with the conventional yeast in a fast motion. I think it's called time lap. But however, you know, and you saw how I made it with the bio yeast. And now I will cut also in the other one. And, well, I have to say, the other pizza had bigger air pockets. And now we have both on the same picture. This one is this one with the bio yeast, and this one is with the conventional yeast. I saw one difference, and this one difference during the preparation of the pizza was that the dough made with the conventional yeast was a little bit easier to stretch, but only a little bit. And now I have the pleasure to taste both pizzas. I will start with the pizza with the bio yeast. And then of course I will also taste the other one. So the taste of both pizza is absolutely identical. They taste fantastic. The dough has a very nice flavor. This comes also from the 48 hours leavening time. There is zero difference from bio fresh yeast to conventional fresh yeast. Also my recommendation to use the bio yeast, use it in the same way like the conventional yeast. There might be a difference if we make dough with a very short leavening time, like for sweet yeast doughs. This could really be the case that we have to calculate here a longer leavening time, but for our pizza dough, where we have leavening times of 48 hours, of 24 hours, it really doesn't matter. So my recommendation is use this kind of yeast. You think this is the right one, and then you are definitely correct. So if you like my video, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe my channel, and then we see us in the next video. Ciao.